None. And let me tell you what, no, in an answer. But let me tell you what the WOD represents, the workout of the day. It represents an advanced routine guaranteed to exceed over time the capacities of the world's fittest human beings. Okay? That's where we started. We wanted to get the pointy end of the spear and backfill. But I do have programs for seniors and for children, and all of this can be scaled. And it would be fundamentally dangerous and irresponsible of any trainer to take someone that you didn't know was a real fire breather and have them run 400 meters, do 15 handstand push-ups, 15-foot rope climb, 2 ascents, and do 4 rounds of that for time. In fact, there's a reasonable chance that the effort could be fatal to someone in a large enough cohort. So we have here in the navigation on the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, start here, it says. And when you read that section, it tells you that you need to learn these movements first and foremost, that there's significant risk in working this hard, and that you want to stay with these movements over time until you can say, yes, I have learned these movements and practice them consistently. And if you want me to pick a time frame for you, just to assure that we don't hurt almost everybody, I'd say about a month of practicing the movements themselves. And then, and only then, I want you to ratchet up the intensity, that is to bring out the stopwatch and start timing this thing and leaning on it and pushing. So mechanics, then consistency with those mechanics, then intensity. Okay? And that's critical. That speaks kind of the safety end of this thing. Sir, I've forgotten your first name? Scott, it's Greg. Scott, we've made some interesting discoveries along the way with this program. One is that GPP, general physical preparedness, is the most neglected aspect of athletic training, especially in the elite athlete, especially. You bring me a D1 megastar, 7-8 figure ball sport megastar, it'll take 2 hours max. I'll find several glaring chinks in his or her general physical preparedness. We've not seen an exception to that. I don't care who you are, how fit you are, bring that person forward, 2 hours max. About half the time it'll take 30 minutes, but 2 hours max, and I'll present you with a list of things where your capacity is substandard vis-a-vis your cohort. Second point. Third, fixing those chinks will make a bigger difference in your sporting performance in your activity than additional focus in sport-specific strength and conditioning will, which is a fascinating discovery. And it will often lend itself useful even when it's mechanically or metabolically not obvious why that's happening. For instance, we made the discovery with USA Skiing that more pull-ups made for better skiers. Now, I've heard a lot of theories, a lot of ideas. We've spent way too many hours over way too many beers talking about why this would be. And I don't have the perfect answer yet, but it's a fact. You add pull-ups to the skiers and you get better skiers. We take an aerobic athlete, guy who only does long distance, and expose them to some high intensity stuff, and we get a better effort. Now that seems like a mismatch in terms of the time domain matching. Sport. Science, the science of physiological adaptation of human performance is not so well understood that highly specialized sporting programs are optimally effective. That's just a fact. That's just a fact. Makes our job really easy. So one size fits all? Well, maybe. Am I saying here that if you do CrossFit, you don't need to do jiu-jitsu and you can go into a jiu-jitsu tournament and be tapping guys out? No. No. You want to get good at football, you got to do football. You want to get good at rugby, you got to play rugby. You want to get good at tennis, you got to play tennis. But what I don't want to see you do is attach a cable to a tennis racket and do this with a weight on the other end and thinking it's making you a better tennis player, because it is not. It is not. Every sport has followed this evolution in terms of strength conditioning. It initially starts out with a strength conditioning effort is obviously mirrored to the sport it's trying to support. So if I got a tennis racket here, right, with a cable attached to it, and I'm swinging this thing, practicing my forehand, and I can work my backhand. If you walked in the gym and saw someone with a tennis racket with a cable attached to it and a load of weights, you'd presume he's trying to improve some tennis capacity, right? Well, that's not how tennis players train anymore. That's not what they're doing. That's not what they're doing. What are they doing? Clean and jerk, snatch, squat, dead. It's almost impossible in the modern era in the NC2A D1 environment to walk in on a training thing, and unless you see that, wow, everyone's black and 7 feet tall, let me guess basketball. I mean, that's kind of easy to do. But if you were just to look at the programming and the prescription for the strength and conditioning effort, it would be almost impossible to identify the sport, to tell whether you were looking at UC Santa Barbara's women's lacrosse or New Zealand All Black men's rugby. You wouldn't see the difference in the strength and conditioning prescription. That's where we're headed. That's where all sports have evolved. So, macrocycles, mesocycles, tutor pompa, What's interesting, Scott, is that we've planted ourselves both feet right out into the sporting community and let people come forward with their own stories. I'm not the one to tell you that CrossFit is the way to do rugby. I'm going to put you in touch with someone that plays rugby. And if you ask me, what are the combat applications to CrossFit, what I'm going to do is put you in touch with someone who has taken CrossFit to war. I'm not really interested in grading my own papers. I just want to measure work capacity across broad time and modal domains. That's what we're doing. Sir?
My concern would be going straight to the system and trying to get the connective tissue in my body to come along with the tendons and ligaments.
Scott, and these are great questions, and we'll just kind of play this as a devil's advocate kind of thing here. I'm not wedded to my position nor defeating yours, but I had a Navy doc hit me with exactly that sentiment. And I had to tell him, I go, Doc, listen, if you came to me and said, I want you to build me a program that screws up about 1 in 5 that participate in it, I go, you've built it. Your program looks to me like it was designed to injure people. How do we do that? I'll tell you one great way is run them long distance where I don't have full functional capacity of the primary movers. I'll tell you what, and we've got a perfect track record with this. Anyone running guys and gals that don't know how to squat, if you cannot take the hip and knee through a full range of functional movement, I don't want high velocity, high repetition, constant use of those same limbs, of the same structure. That's how we end up with the washout rate we've seen in the programs where we've participated, whether it was a Marine, the sniper scout school, or at Buds. And here's the CrossFit record, just to speak directly and factually to that concern. There has been a dramatic reduction in all-cause injury with CrossFit wherever it's been implemented, whether it was Canadian Forces, at Buds, at NSW, Colorado State Patrol, LAPD SWAT. They had a significant reduction in injury, significant. What I need to do is I need to teach first and foremost the mechanics of human movement. Do you know that in military training there is no full range of motion hip extension? Let me draw the picture for you here. If this looks like a human being, we're doing well here. You see it, Scott? I got pelvis, spine, right? This angle here is a hip. This alpha here, opening it as I do when I squat, when I rise up. That's full range of functional movement for the hip. Okay? I've watched hundreds, if not thousands of hours, spent out there, watched guys PT forever. Military training fundamentally has no full range of motion hip extension, and certainly none under power, high load, high velocity. And yet, if you ask me, Coach, what single bit of human movement would predict success more than any other for all sporting activity? I'm going to tell you, powerful hip extension. Powerful hip extension. You want to punch hard, powerful hip extension. You want to run fast, powerful hip extension. You want to jump high, powerful hip extension. You want to be able to evacuate a buddy from the scene safely, effectively, quickly, powerful hip extension. It's critical. And I need to learn it under low velocity, low load, low kinematic demands. And it might take me a half hour, an hour, or 6 days to teach them how to squat. But if I can't take the primary movers, the joints and muscles, the levers, if I can't take this through functional movement controlled, a natural functional line of movement, full range controlled, I'm making a powerful mistake to add high velocity, high impact repetition to it. We don't see the stress factors, the very orthopedic concerns you have, Scott, I think we've addressed and perfectly, and I'll push the data your way to look at that. Here's what we had at Buds. For the first time in 17 years, we had a 2-year period with no PT rollbacks and no PT injuries. First time ever. First time ever. No, I think we're on this straight away. But Scott, if your concern is that, wow, that could lead to orthopedic injury? Yeah, you bet it could. Worse than that, it could lead to death. Rhabdomyolysis is a very real concern, a very real concern. We have an inordinate problem with it. CrossFit does. We see way too much rhabdo. Why? This program is a very potent dose-response curve. Look, all dose-response curves look like this. They're flat, lazy, sideways S's. You start 0, nothing happens, add a little more, nothing really happens, and all of a sudden you get a big, strong reaction, then past that, nothing really happens. All dose-response curves look like that. The CrossFit dose-response curve is particularly steep. I spoke of efficacy and efficiency. The time rate of adaptation is dramatic. The adaptation itself, I'll tell you just to play with the numbers, we would typically take a cohort of soldiers and increase their work capacity over broad time and modal domains, somewhere between 30 to 40% increase in their work capacity within about 12 weeks. Okay? The potency of the stimulus is so marked that dosing becomes critical. What would happen if you took 2 Pilates classes in one day? So you went in the morning and took a Pilates class or a yoga class, and then later in the day go, hey, that was a blast, I'm going to go do another one. Could that be potentially lethal? No, you'd be perfectly safe. In fact, if you took 3, 4, or 5 Pilates classes, I'm telling you, you'd be fine. I'm not going to tell you that that's dangerous. Anyone that hasn't been doing constantly varied high-intensity functional movements that steps into something like this, it may kill you. And 2 in a day could certainly have that impact. Am I clear on that? This is a potent dose response. It needs to be treated like powerful medicine. One of our DEA agents said, this is great, he says that CrossFit is like when the good heroin comes to town. I go, what do you mean? He goes, well, we got all these dead guys in the ER. And I go, yeah, that's what's happened. I mean, if your exposure to PT has been run, pull up, sit up, burpee, lather, rinse, repeat ad nauseum, what you're going to find is that you're entirely unprepared for these kind of kinematic demands. Remember I told you on this graph that I would let you pick the modalities, that I really don't care what they are, right? The movements that we use, the functional movements, are singularly unique in their ability to move large loads long distance quickly. Force, distance, time, it's power again. And so that if you pick activities other than ours, what it turns out is that you end up with a much lower curve. And so we've kind of, once we decide that work capacity is key for human performance, just like it is with helicopters, missiles, rocket ships, and trucks, once you come to that understanding, you almost end up with our list of movements, because the movements that we're using, the CrossFit movements, are singularly unique in their ability to move large distance, big loads, and quickly. They are singularly unique in their ability to express power. Which, by the way, for those of you with physiology background, power is defined by the exercise physiologist. That is the definition of intensity, correct? It is almost always, most commonly, the independent variable associated with maximizing the rate of return of favorable adaptation. I don't care what it is. You tell me I want to bring my HDLs up. You do. That's your good cholesterol. You want to bring them up. I'm going to tell you intensity is the key. Is the key to power. Is the key to bringing that up. You want to improve. You want to decrease body fat. I'm going to tell you intensity is the key. Not volume, but intensity. You want to improve muscle mass. It's going to be intensity. You want to elicit this neuroendocrine response, a substantial alteration of the hormonal and neurological milieu. Intensity is the key. I do not know of a significant adaptation that isn't intensity dependent. Not a favorable one. Increased bone density. We all want that, right? Bigger, stronger, healthier bones. It's intensity. You want to decrease your insulin resistance. It's intensity. You want to improve power? Well, hell, power is intensity. That one's a no-brainer. Why aren't more people working out with intensity? The laughs tell me, because it doesn't feel good. There's a big difference between doing one of our workouts and sitting on the life cycle for an hour reading the New York Times. It's a huge difference. It's a huge difference.